Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. James Cuthbertson, Chief Revenue Officer here at Relative Insight. Welcome to part one of my four-part mini-series, the Without Us series, where I'm going to be talking to all of you CX and CX Insights professionals about how to supercharge your CX tech stack. So we're going to be starting with the thorny topic of orchestration tools, a really exciting area for all of us in CX. So I'm going to be taking you through our positioning and how we think that we can really take what you're doing in this space to the next level. So without further ado, as I mentioned, I'm James and I run all things commercial here at Relative Insight. So the first thing I want to do is just very quickly put you in the room with what it is that we do. We are an AI-powered text analytics tool, which focuses on CX and CX insights. And so the way to think about us is that we take all of the different data that's being generated across your entire customer journey. Think every part of onboarding and customer care, sales, you name it, wherever basically the rubber meets the road, wherever you're interacting with your customers. And the types of data that tends to be captured in, without stating the obvious, is things like reviews, case management and chat, VOC surveys of all types and all parts in the journey, and also finally contact center, the transcripts that come from all of those amazing conversations that your agents will be having with your customers. We bring that data into Relative in an automatic and an automated fashion, and we use our unique comparative technology in order to help you understand what's changing day on day on day, or week on week on week, in order to help understand the language that's being used by your customers. How is that moving and affecting the things that you really care about, the KPIs such as CSAT, OSAT, NPS, churn, sales, etc. Now, what we do with those insights, once they're generated from our unique comparative technology, we then are able to do a number of really interesting things with it. The first is that we can push them to your existing visualization tools. And one of the things you'll hear me talk about a bunch today and throughout this webinar series is existing, right? We're not looking to rewrite the rule book or rip out anything that you've already got. The majority of brands will have spent a great deal of time, effort, and money, which needs to be applauded, putting all of this stuff in place. We're all about supercharging it and basically taking that existing framework that you've built with the existing vendors you have and really bringing it to life. So the first area is visualization tools, which will be one of the webinar series coming up. Think Tableau, Power BI, Looker, etc. The second is data warehousing technology. So what Relative Insight can do is we can push enriched customer information, not just who they are and what they've done, but also what they've said, into data warehousing tools, think Snowflake, etc. The third is we obviously focus, like a big part of our focus is in reporting. And so we've started to build really interesting automatic reporting programs, and that's primarily delivered through email. And we'll be doing, that'll be one of our four as well. And then the final piece that we add value through is intersecting with next best action capability. So think about any of that, like automation or decisioning capability that you have either through CRM or a dedicated capability through the likes of Exponent or Braze or Pega systems. And the benefits over on the right-hand side are pretty obvious, right? So we're bringing all of this data into one place, allowing a uniform analysis using one lexicon and one system. That means that you don't have to be going to find out what's happening with your customers across all these different vendors, but rather in one. The second is that the taxonomy that we'll use is bespoke to each customer, and therefore that will give you really good confidence, because the NFL are going to want a different taxonomy to a pharmaceutical company, for example. The third is that this generally elevates the existing customer data that's already in your organization and means that it works harder and you guys can make more decisions from it. And then the final thing is that you can drive a bunch of automation, meaning that smart, highly paid people within your organization are not wasting time doing pivot tables and copy and pasting things into Excel spreadsheets. Cool. So why is that important? Why is that useful? Well, firstly, the first thing to say is that very few organizations are thinking about this in this way. And so there's a great deal of quick and easy gains to be made. And we see them in three areas. The first is that we can drive efficiency So this reporting will already be taking place almost certainly. People within your organization will be trying to work out every month for a big all hands meeting what's going on with the customers. Why has churn gone up? Why is CSAT gone down? Whatever it is. And so we can help automate that process, make it more efficient, more consistent, and ultimately more efficacious, right? So there's fewer errors in it and it actually lands and works. And so by doing that, by making that process of reporting quicker and easier, more scientific, what we'd see is that more decisions are made more often by operational stakeholders because they're getting those reports either in the right dashboard or in an email coming into them. Instead of having to go and fish for it or wait for that monthly all hands, it means that they're able to make more decisions more quickly, try more things, and that impacts those KPIs that you're measuring: CSAT, OSAT, NPS, churn, sales, etc. And it just means that incremental gains in the business are just happening more often. And so ultimately, the top of the pyramid, which is what we all go to school for, right, is there is a financial win. Churn comes down, sales goes up, CSAT increases, whatever it is. It's easy for me to say that, but I think it's really important that we show our working here, that we don't just show the top of the pyramid. By implementing relative insight on top of your existing CX insight stack will help you make more money. It's actually that we show how we do that. And it starts with the rigor of improving that reporting, which, if I'm totally honest, is sometimes extremely manual and quite backward in its nature. And I think there's an opportunity now to improve it. So with that said, then, let's talk more specifically now about automation, decisioning, and next best action capability, which, if we're being antagonistic, without insights could be seen as workflow, i.e., I'm just bunging some people into a decisioning process. If this, then this. It's not specific. It's not tailored to that individual. It's not taking enough data points and considerations when running automations. And so these are some of the things that we believe in, right? The assumption is that most customer-facing brands will automate at least part of their journeys. It's pretty obvious as a consumer once you know what to look for. Most people have been doing this over the last decade. It makes a lot of sense. The challenge, however, is that some automations are highly delightful to customers because it saves time. It means they don't need to speak to agents. It means they get what they want quickly. However, other automations are an absolute car wreck, and they cause more problems and move those KPIs that businesses are obsessing around in the totally wrong direction. And that means that the results of automation and a next best action program are unpredictable and very difficult to interpret or to pick apart. So the solution, without bringing voice of the customer analytics into a decisioning program, you are effectively just running a load of A/B tests and working out what sticks, what doesn't. There's a lot of complexity behind it, for sure. And I'm by all means, I'm not diminishing the importance of decisioning or next best action capability at all. But what I am saying is, if you bring analytics into that mix, then what you can understand is what is broken, what are causing massive frustrations in the customer journey, without having to test that with real customers. You can actually use analytics to find out where the bombs are, and then you can use next best action capability to fix those problems in almost real time. And so I think that's what is particularly powerful about bringing relative insight into your decisioning or your next best action capability, because we can be the canary in the mine, or whichever analogy you prefer. We can be the detector for what's good and what's bad, and then automation can then bring that to life. And there's massive efficiencies to be driven by bringing those two things together. So the other thing to consider is that automation exists in all parts of the customer journey. Now, obviously, for this schematic, it's nice to put this as linear, right? So inquiry and then welcoming, customer care, loyalty. it's neat, to put it like that. But obviously, I think we all understand, especially those people that are working in brands, that it's not always as neat and linear as this. And so what we need to be doing is, by embedding voice of the customer analytics throughout your customer journey, in all parts of your customer journey, Relative Insight will be able to surface all of the areas where problems are emerging as they emerge, or great things are happening as they happen. And therefore, you can then bring the right automations in order to solve problems or capitalize on where you're winning. And so these are some of the, you'll have to forgive the slightly incendiary language, but these are some of the things that I believe. By bringing voice to the customer insights together with your journey orchestration, you're able to close the loop. So by removing people, what I mean by that is, I derive an insight from our VOC analysis. I found out that customers are upset because A, B, and C. I'll then schedule a meeting, walk down the corridor, wait for our monthly all hands, send someone an email, whatever it is. By having that human in the loop process, unfortunately, especially in big and complex organizations, things get lost. Whereas as soon as you use voice of the customer analytics to drive your next best action capability, so they work together, you can take people and process out of the loop, and you can make amazing things happen in real time. And I've obviously said people suck, right? We don't suck. People are amazing. However, people are busy, people are distracted, they've got a lot of things on. And so if you're reliant on a number of people in a chain for an insight to be taken and actioned, it is incredibly difficult. Where you're relying on no people and you're using automation, it's significantly less difficult. And so things happen quicker and more often. The second thing is that, as I mentioned, like, being able to automate something is not particularly impressive or special, and it's very much table stakes. However, by understanding that customer A has talked about topics 1, 2, and 3 over the next 3 months and is now exhibiting churn behavior, when you reach out to him or her to try and to try and save them from churning, as opposed to it to being a generic out of the box email, SMS, nudge in their app, whatever it is. If you're actually able to refer back to the 3 topics that they've been discussing in all of their other customer contact interactions, then that email goes from being maybe another annoyance to actually potentially an opportunity to really connect with that person, because you're speaking their language and you're talking about the topics that they're really interested in. The next one is fairly obvious, right? So by using VOC to drive next best action capability, you can, over time, incrementally improve your journey performance, and therefore drive ROI on your CX Insights program. I think CX and CX Insights people are more and more pressurized to sort of weaponize their program. They don't want to just use it for insights, but they want to use it to actually drive dollars or pounds or euros, depending on where you are. And so this is an opportunity to do that by showing that you've been able to get people to a resolution quicker, reduce the number of steps, reduce the number of friction points, increase the scores, whatever it is that you're focused on. You can incrementally do that by bringing these 2 things together. And then the final thing is it accelerates the whole process. I've kind of touched on it a number of times, but by being able to automate an action from an insight every week, so you see an insights come through, and instead of having to have a discussion about it or circle the wagons to try and bring the right stakeholders together, if you have insights feeding next best action capability, it can happen every week. And obviously, there's an element of trust there. You need to do it with some sort of kind of like, you need to cage it to begin with, because obviously it's initially a little bit worrying for just decisioning to be made out in the wild within your organization. But once that trust is built, the idea of insights feeding next best action capability means that it can happen in very, very quick, almost real time. And that means that you can accelerate the delivery of these incredible insights, actually having an impact in the business. Now I'd like to take you through a real example, a customer here at Relative Insight. So these guys are a well-known streaming provider that you certainly will have heard of. So let me explain the little schematic on the right. On the left-hand side, you've got all of the different data sources where they interact with their customer. So this is their customer journey, but just broken out by the types of data. So they have a contact center where they're doing calls and some chat. They have a social case study. They have a social case management tool. They have a number of different chatbots throughout their customer journey. They collect reviews, and they obviously do surveys. So as you can see, that data is being pulled into Relative Insight, and all of the analytical magistry that I spoke a little bit about earlier is all taking place. So our unique comparative technology is finding out what's happening every week in all of those different data sets, and bringing out themes and all the good stuff you'd expect. It's what's next that I think is interesting. So today I'm not going to focus in on the data warehousing or dashboarding tools or email reporting. Those are for later in the webinar series, so definitely tune in for those. I'm going to focus on what we do with their decisioning tool. So by packaging up the insights that are coming from this voice of the customer analytics, what we're able to do is we're able to deliver these little parcels of information at a customer level. And that can either be predetermined. So for example, this particular customer is very focused on churn behavior. So when someone starts to exhibit churn language, what we're able to do is we're able to pick that individual up and say, based on the language that they've been exhibiting, we know that this person is exhibiting churn language. What that then does is that then it sends that information, so the name of the person, all the other information that we know about them, but also what they've been saying, it delivers that into their decisioning tool. You have a dedicated decisioning tool. And then that then creates next best action decisions based on our parcel of information, which is specifically interesting, or particularly interesting, because not only is it drawing on that one data point of someone exhibiting churn behavior, it's also looking at all of the language that they've exhibited over the last 4 weeks when interacting with the customer care teams, and by if they've submitted surveys or if they've been interacting with chatbots. And what this has led to is not only an increased open rate in some of the emails that are being delivered or SMSs, but it's also actually actively lowered churn, because we've been able to identify a number of key reasons that people are looking to churn before they take that action. And that's been absolutely crucial for this streaming provider that has suffered with seasonal churn or churn associated with major TV shows, either beginning or ending. So it's been really, really pleasing. And it's not to say that they didn't have all of the bones of this program in place, but by putting Relative Insight in as an analytical layer, we've been able to really drive that decisioning forward in a very, very short time. And it's been highly, highly efficient. So thank you very much for logging in today and joining the webinar. I hope you really enjoyed it. Naturally, a lot of this has been reasonably top level, so we'd love an opportunity to talk more about this. If you want to challenge these ideas, of course, these are my ideas and Relative Insights ideas, and so we'd also really welcome any form of discussion on this topic. Please do join me for the remainder of the series, where we're going to be focusing on those other areas that I mentioned, so notably all of our analytics capability and how we view that and how we can help you move that forward. Data warehousing and how we can bring a bit of an X factor to data warehousing, and then finally the BI and business visualization tools, how you can get more out of those tools that you're already using. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you soon.